Good morning, YouTube. It's 10 a.m. in the great state of Texas, and you guys are watching my Labor Day weekend project. But it's not Labor Day weekend, so that makes no sense why I call it that. But did this project back on Labor Day weekend. I had 4 days off from work, so I decided to get in the workshop and make a bunch of stuff. And initially I had planned on releasing this on Labor Day. However, things don't work out when you plan them that way. So all this was a scrap piece of wood that's been laying around in the shop. So if you've noticed for the past couple of weeks, a lot of my projects on my channel have just been scrap wood pieces that we're gluing up, making bowls out of. Because I'm trying to get rid of all the scrap wood, but I'm not trying to go ahead and just throw it all away. So I had this plank board that I literally have had in the corner of the shop for like over a year, and decided finally to do something with it. It's this plywood glued up pressed board that looks absolutely disgusting, and I'm trying to figure out something to do with it other than just making a plain pine board. So I just went ahead, decided take the board, glue it up, measure it out, cut it out, put it on the table saw, put it on the bandsaw, glue it up with this porridge looking glue, and see what kind of cool project we can make out of it. And essentially that's all we're doing in today's project. If you guys saw the thumbnail, this was a happy mistake, because this ended up turning out a lot better than I initially thought. So once we got everything glued up, cut out, all that good stuff, put it in the vice grips, watch the glue out. This part actually looks pretty cool. I like doing this part where it just, gets all over the workbench. Thank goodness I got this silicone mat here, because it's just, don't be stingy with your glue, essentially is what I'm saying. So a couple of days, actually I think this was like 24 hours, put that in the vice grips, and then we just went ahead and took that out. And we got this cool cheese block. I'm going to start calling these blocks cheese blocks, because there's a lot more pine videos coming down the pipe. So getting this not glued down, getting this just putting the faceplate on there, obviously. Sorry. Doing this commentary at like 2 o'clock in the morning, trying to get this done. But got this onto the lathe. Not a whole lot of issues here. We're just going to go ahead and see what we can kind of make out of it. I kind of had an idea going into this one of what I wanted to do, but I didn't know exactly how it was going to hold up once I started to actually do my plan. Because like all woodworking projects that I do, at least, when I work on something, nothing exactly goes the way I envisioned. So this part was, relatively easy, and then I decided, you know what, let's start drilling holes in it and see what happens. So I forgot where I saw this technique done. I probably saw this on TikTok or YouTube. I know I'm not the first person to kind of do this, but I was like, let's just take this pine board, put some holes in it, we can add some epoxy, and just see where it goes. So then I took 2 drill bits. One was like, I think a 1/2 inch, and then this is a 1/4 inch bit, and we're just drilling holes with my awesome Ryobi drill. For all you purists out there, it's like, oh my god, Ryobi. I was like, it's cheap and it works. At least this one does. So if you don't like my drill, I'm sorry. Anyway, so once we drilled all the holes, then we just took the faceplate off, and now we're gonna pour some epoxy over it to kind of fill those gaps. And don't be stingy with your hot glue, because this thing will float, obviously. So I didn't intend on saving this actual mold, so got that glued in there real good. And just gonna mix up some epoxy. Sorry for the commentary, I'm just all over the place. This is actually the 3rd time I've tried to do this. If you have a woodworking channel and do commentary, sometimes it just doesn't work out the way you planned. So I'm just rambling at this point. But real pretty purple, pouring that over, just filling those gaps. And all essentially we're doing is we're gonna throw this in the pressure pot for 4.5 hours, let the epoxy sit up, and then we're just going to turn it on the lathe, and we're going to have this cool polka dot type of effect. But when you put the epoxy in there, it does fill those gaps, and it does shrink and absorb into the blank itself. So then you have to come back, put more epoxy in there, and this time I decided to do a darker purple, because I'm like, why not at this point? We'll do a transition from a light to a darker purple, and just kind of get a cool effect for it. So I didn't know how much epoxy I was going to need, so I just went ahead and mixed up 2 of these cups, and we're going to pour that over now. It looks more blue on camera, but trust me, it is purple blue, I guess, just depending on I guess how your eyes adjust to the color. But looks really cool. I'm really happy with this color, and I really went to the edge of this put it in the pressure pot 4.5 hours later, 11 o'clock at night, and it's 90 degrees in the workshop. So ended up doing this late at night, and then that leftover epoxy I just poured on my silicone mat, and I just thought it would be cool to show you guys, hey man, if you guys are interested in the silicone mat, definitely get one. And I did this intentionally, and it also cleans the mat up as well, but it comes out in these cool little sheets. Cool little effect. You can see how much cleaner it is comparatively. So this is what it looks like 4.5 hours later in the pressure pot. Got all the epoxy filled in, got all the spots filled in. Really happy how this looks. And we're going to just put a waste block. I don't even think we're doing a waste block. We're just chipping this out. Like I said earlier, I wasn't trying to save the mold. I wasn't trying to do all that. Just going to pop this out, and then we're going to put the faceplate on there, and then we'll just go ahead and start turning it down on the lathe itself. Once you put hot glue on stuff, it's pretty much, it's a done deal for that mold. So I just throw that away. I get those at like the dollar store for like $2. You get like a pack of 4, so not too upset about that. So back to the Ryobi drill and just drilling down the faceplate, getting that all secure. And I think I can't remember. I did a couple of projects this weekend, but I think this is the one where the faceplate doesn't detach. Maybe. Yeah, we'll see. So got that all squared up. Now we're just, taking down that material. And this part went, from what I can remember, relatively easy because most of the work had been done. And all we're doing is taking down that layer of epoxy and just making sure that wood comes out with the epoxy so you get that polka dot type of effect with it. And I don't think I had a lot of issues here. The actual ribbons are coming off really good. So from what I can remember, this part went relatively easy. Here's a zoomed in close up of what that looks like. And you can see we're just getting good material worked off there. Not a whole lot of issues there. Starting and stopping the lathe, making sure that it's, to a nice size that we like. And you can start to see the epoxy come out a little bit more prevalent there toward the tailstock, working down that bottom. And then really scared that I was going to get some chip out there near the headstock, so I was kind of just like super cautious there a little bit. And now we're just getting the bottom worked out so we can flip it over, make the mortise, keep taking off material bit by bit, starting and stopping the lathe. So now we're just making the actual mortise itself. This part, I've learned a little bit better how to use the larger carbide tools for making mortises, and this part went really easy. Not a whole lot of issues here. Went a little too deep, so I had to come back again on the side and take some of that material off again. But once we got it sized up, not a whole lot of problems after that point. So then we're just taking the faceplate off. You can see here we still got that thick layer of epoxy on the top of it, but it makes a cool lip and rim for the bowl itself. So was really happy how that one, kind of turned out. And all we're doing is squaring everything up, obviously. And now we're just going to get everything nice and flat. Everything's nice and balanced. So then we can start the actual gouging portion of the video. And at this point, pretty happy. I already love how the polka dots kind of look. It actually turned out a lot better. So I was pretty happy at this point how things were looking. Usually all my plans that I make for these videos never end up going exactly how I planned them out. But this one, relatively happy how this looks. So not a whole lot of issues here. Now we're just gouging out this, boring pine board or whatever. Sorry if you guys can hear my cats in the background. They've got the zoomies at 2 o'clock in the morning. But they're just, being crazy cats. Anyway, back to the video. So then we worked it off to a nice depth. Not a whole lot of issues here. This part went relatively smooth from what I can remember. Just working the edges, getting that bowl to a nice depth. You can see all the shavings and everything we're getting off the sides here. But overall, really happy how this ends up turning out. And we're just finishing up on the bottom. You can see a little bit of glue. So all I'm doing here is just coming back and refining that, trying to take as much of the glue off as possible before we start my favorite part, which is sanding. So once we got to this part, this is what the bowl looks like before we actually started to sand it. Like I said, good ribbons, a lot of material worked off. I wish I had one of those shop vac things that just vacuumed up all this stuff. That would be so convenient. Maybe one day. So for this part, like I said earlier in the video, it was like 90 degrees. By the time I did the sanding, it was like 92, 93 degrees in there. and for some reason the actual epoxy began to melt onto the sandpaper. So I think I only went up to like, I want to say 400 as far as like sandpaper grits. I did not spend a lot of sanding on this one because literally the lip of the bowl was gluing on or melting onto the sandpaper due to the friction and the heat. But once we, I just decided, you know what, cut your losses. It's better to have something than nothing to kind of show for it. So this part, just waxed it up real good. You can see the wood grain in there pops really, really well. Love how this ends up turning out. Like I said, this was like a happy mistake, making something that's relatively mundane, this pine board, and turning it into a pretty cool looking bowl. But overall, really happy how this turns out. Not a whole lot of issues. Like I said, this is supposed to be a Labor Day project, but we got it done. Popped open a beer in the beginning of the video. Gonna have a beer to celebrate, so hope you guys are liking it. Hope you're enjoying it. This is the final product, and I'll see you in the next one. Alright, peace. Alright, so project is done. This is the second time I'm doing this outro because I'm pretty sure I have a little bit of dehydration because it's hot and it's 90 degrees right now in my workshop. Project got done. I cut the sanding short. I went from 340 all the way up to 340 all the way to 400, and I started to get smoking out of the wood and out of the epoxy. It was just melting up against the sandpaper. Sandpaper was adhesing to the epoxy on the rim, and I just had to cut it short. So I didn't get the cool polish that I wanted on the epoxy itself, but I mean, it turned out cool. The polka dots look really cool. Cool little technique. I think we're gonna try this again in the future. But it's so hot here in Texas right now. It's literally 1 o'clock in the morning. Today's the morning of September 8th, and it's just hot, and I'm sweating over here, and it's just getting to me. So I'm gonna get inside and cool off. But overall, we got the project done. Doesn't look too bad. Looks really cool. I'm surprised it worked out as well as it did. So I'm definitely gonna do this technique a little bit later. Hopefully, it cools off here in Texas, so we can get some more of these projects done. But man, it is just hot, and unless you're in West Texas right now, I can't really describe what it feels like to be in a workshop turning when it's like 90 degrees at 1 o'clock in the morning. So I'm gonna head indoors, head inside. Like I said, you guys are probably watching this in late September, but project's done. Looks really cool. We're gonna do this again. Hopefully we'll get the sanded down to the way that we want to the next time. But don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. I'm going to go cool off. All right, peace.